This is Garis, Masculist, MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 522, entitled, "What will masculist gender political dominance look like?" Description. This flyer paints a picture of what society will look like when masculist ideas have achieved gender political dominance. It explains the 4-step process of how this will happen. Now the flyer itself. What will masculist gender political dominance look like? By Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. I've always been a futurist. If you look at my website or Google my name, you'll see that I was one of the pioneering few who raised the issue of species dominance. That is, should humanity or godlike, massively intelligent machines rule the planet? In this flyer, I apply that same kind of futuristic thinking to the question of what a masculist-dominated gender politics will look like. Firstly, of what relevance is the question itself? Personally, I think it is inevitable that masculist ideas will dominate gender politics, since so much of feminist ideology is just wishful thinking, more a religion to women than a gender political ideology that preaches to women what they desperately want to hear, rather than telling them very negative truths that the masculists tell them. Feminists like to believe that women are as capable as men, that the patriarchy can be destroyed, and the like. Masculism, on the other hand, is much more science-based, reality-based, and hence is a lot more credible, more persuasive to minds who care about realities and not airy-fairy PC crap. Masculism appeals to the smartest of men with the highest IQs, since feminism is destroying the quality of life of millions of men. So overcoming this problem sparks the interest and motivation of such men, who then use their formidable intellectual talents to crush the stupidities of monoconscious feminism. Given that men are smarter than women and hugely more aggressive, in brackets, given their 10 times higher testosterone levels in their blood, close brackets, I see it only as a question of time before masculist ideas spread through the culture, so that the smartest of men take up these ideas and then take back their natural male dominance that men have always had. The cultural anthropological evidence for this is universal. In all cultures, the leaders are men. Women can't compete with men at the top end of the performance scale due to their average lower IQs by 4 IQ points and their 10% lower IQ variance. That is, their IQ scores over a whole population are more bunched up, whereas men's are more spread out. So that the morons and the genii are males. So given that the genii are males, it's not surprising that women have won a pathetic 1% of science Nobel Prizes and even fewer math prizes. A person with an IQ 10 points higher than another person is a lot more likely to attain a more prestigious position in society than the dumber person. With this logic, given that the genii are males, then the leaders of countries who are extremely highly filtered for IQ, grit, vision, social skills, etc., are the 1 in a million types, literally, so are rare, so are male. So for the rest of this flyer, let us assume that it's only a question of time before gender politics is dominated by masculism. So how will such a society look after that happens? One of the first things to go will be monoconscious feminazi arrogance and public misandry, Since if a feminist is stupid enough to dump on men in public, then a dozen well-informed masculists in her audience will take vengeful pleasure in ripping her apart verbally, crushing her ego with a hateful masculist harangue, pointing out to her her inferior female status. Since women have 10% smaller brains, women don't invent anything, build anything, create anything. Women couldn't hunt, fight, plough, etc. So were always considered to be useless to the tribe, except for their two traditional monopolies of vagina and womb. So women have always only been tolerated by men, but certainly not respected, due to women's grossly inferior performance track record. So men have never taken women seriously because of women's genetic inferiority, as explained above. Normally, men have to be nice to women because men want to penis women. Women's only real source of attraction to men are their vaginas, and since women have always had a monopoly over reproduction, a woman will reject a man who is not nice to her. However, women are now losing their traditional control over men's hunger to penis them by the fact that 40% of women are now obese and 30% are fat. So to slim quality men, 2/3 of women have now made themselves unfuckable, so are much more easily rejected by such men. So it's now not surprising that many millions of men are now going their own way, utterly fed up with the MFBs, monoconscious, feminazi bigots, that surround them, most of whom are too fat to be fuckable. So these women lose the only source of attraction they have to men, so are simply ignored to a slow death, left rotting on the shelf. Now comes the rise of masculism, a gender political ideology for men, the male equivalent of feminism, an ideology out to liberate men, billions of men, from decades-lasting man's slavery at the hands of fluffy, career-incompetent females who don't bother to get career-competent educations and expect at the back of their minds that some gullible, stupid, ignorant, man-slaveable man will work for her for decades of his life, just by her wiggling her twat at him, giving him a bit of sex from time to time. Masculists are angry, masculists are hateful, and lash out at this fluffy man-slavery and aim to wipe these fluffies off the face of the earth by forcing them to rot on the shelf, utterly rejected by masculisted men. Now, jump a few years into the future and imagine that there are now millions, if not billions, of masculisted men who have had their masculist consciousness raised. They have been educated by the masculist media, masculist blogs, masculist opinions presented to them by their friends and acquaintances who have taught them how oppressive the traditional male role is of working for decades of a man's life for a fluffy, man-slaving parasite. Women are herd animals, so will conform to the new bi-conscious norm once they feel that the majority of men are angry, hateful masculists who do not tolerate MFBs, that's monoconscious, feminazi bigots, who harangue such women out of the room, expressing their masculist hatred at what such women do to men, with their control of the divorce courts, thus indirectly wiping out whole populations due to the toxicity of divorce, and hence marriage and paternity, so have caused 2/3 of young men to reject marriage and paternity, so are crashing the birth rate, but are merely reacting to the toxicity of divorce at the hands of the hated, fluffy feminist divorce court lawyers and judges whom masculist soldiers are threatening to kill in a sex war, since what the fluffy feminists are doing in the divorce courts cannot continue, or whole populations get wiped out. Masculists see the fluffy feminists as indirect genociders who have to be stopped. Now imagine what life will be like in the high schools when there are millions of masculists. I would not like to be an 18-year-old female in the 12th grade who has gained the reputation, in her social circle of being a fluffy. That will be the kiss of death for her. Her male classmates, now assumed to be nearly all masculists, will not tolerate her, so will exclude her both socially and sexually, spitting in her face for being a hated, manslaving, fluffy parasite. Such young women will become suicidally depressed due to their total rejection. So we can expect a flood of young women into career competent educations. Fluffy crappers who choose to study fluffy crap majors will die out. Masculists estimate that in today's world, about 80% of young women choose to become fluffy crappers at the critical age of 16 by choosing to study the intellectually easy, memory-based majors that are not career competent, so dooming themselves to have to study more fluffy crap majors at university, resulting in them getting a fluffy crap diploma that the economy does not value and pays little for. These fluffy crappers then expect to be able to find some gullible, manslavable man to work for her. But when most men are masculisted, that's not going to happen. And in fact, she will be rejected hatefully on all sides by masculisted men who see her as manslaving vermin and spit in her face. At universities, there will be a major U-turn as the male students become strongly, hatefully masculisted and take back the gender political dominance that they have had throughout history. They'll go through a series of gender political steps. The first, of course, is education. For the majority of men to become masculists, they first need to be exposed to masculist ideas so that they can have their masculist consciousnesses raised. It's the task of the Masculist, MGTOW, etc. men's lib movements to educate the millions of currently ignorant men into masculist ideas, teaching them that their traditional male role of being a manslave to a woman for decades of his life is a truly shitty lifestyle. Now that women have a life expectancy of 85 years and a career window of half a century. So these gender politically ignorant men are taught masculist ideas, which then change the lives and life goals of these men. Millions, later billions of them. Step 2 will be the creation of powerful masculist groups within the universities, as masculisted men join forces to challenge and later crush the current hegemony of feminist thinking. In just a few years, we will see verbally violent clashes between monoconscious feminists who truly believe that men oppress women worse, and biconscious masculists who know that women oppress men worse, since they have the evidence of both sides that the monoconscious feminists do not have, since they are monoconscious. They only know feminism and are ignorant of masculist ideas. Once thousands of men are educated into masculist ideas on campus, they will then really start hitting back at the feminazis with very strong male verbal aggressiveness. And the monoconscious feminists are going to be truly shocked at this and wonder, quote, "What the fuck has happened to men? Where did this terrible male anger come from? What is this masculism they keep talking about?" End quote. Since university women are smarter than average women, they will start learning masculist ideas and be influenced by them, making a lot of them bi-conscious, seeing that women oppress men as well, so that they begin to understand the source of masculist hatred of fluffy manslavers and fluffy feminist hypocrisy and genocide, and to some extent begin to fear being rejected as women by the growing majority of men who have masculisted themselves. These biconscious women are still women, so want to have babies, so need a man to help them pay for that, since these women know that it is virtually impossible to be both a committed female careerist and stay at home looking after very small children. So the masculist threat of her babylessness is threatening indeed. So she will be motivated to learn masculism, to become bi-conscious, as a stepping stone to become nicer to men, so that maybe some man can be enticed by her to pay for her to have a kid or two. So expect a gender ideological war on thousands of campuses in the coming few years as masculistic male students establish a gender political dominance on campus, using their superior male intelligence and far greater verbal aggressive and masculist hatred at what women are doing to men, especially in the divorce courts, the existence of the mara but no para, paternity fraud, lifelong man's slavery of men, etc. Once the gender wars have been won on the campuses, the next major step will be the men fairing of the media, as thousands of female monoconscious journalists start reporting on these university gender wars, thus spreading masculist ideas to the general public. In time, nearly any educated, fairly intelligent person will be influenced by masculist ideas, and then the fourth major phase of the rise of masculism can take place, and that is politics. Specifically, the creation of GECs, GECs, that is Gender Equality Committees, in the parliaments that consist half of female feminists and half of male masculists, so that the gender issues of both sexes can be dealt with equally, which is far from being the case today, which is why masculists are so hateful of monoconscious feminists who know nothing of how women oppress men. A couple of decades from now, bi-consciousness will have become the collective norm, and anyone expressing a monoconscious view will not be